on what is Caspin's 5th birthday. This day, 2020, the company formally listed on the exchange, and it seems to have gone by like that, and then sometimes it feels like it's been 50 years rather than 5. But a special day for us. We've come a long way, and looking forward to giving you an update on recent activities. Before I do that, thanks to Justin, our chair, John, non-exec, two brilliant minds that are an integral part of the company. Des, I appreciate your kind words that you said earlier, but it really is a collaborative team effort at board level, and I think the difference that Caspin has is having some really capable people. That is complemented by Steve Wood, our co-sec at the back, and Shraddha Thomas also helps with co-sec and CFO facilities, very capable. And of course, the engine room, our geological team are here, Ben Kimpton and Gary Dick, who make all of that stuff out in the field happen. So I'm getting there, John, thanks for reminding. But and then of course it's all wrapped up in with people who help with everything else that puts some polish on it. Fiona Letchford, our executive assistant, does a great job. Thanks, Fiona. And of course, Evie assists with IR and is doing a video for us today so we can share this presentation with our many shareholders who were unable to make it. So a moment to just reflect on the past 12 months, and it's been a really, so this has been the first full 12 months of us with the Bygoo Tin Project. We acquired it just before our AGM last year, a fantastic asset that we were delighted to get hold of. And I guess it's taken a little bit of time, a bit of a slow burn for the market to catch up and for us to actually get full value. Well, I don't think we're at full value yet, but to actually get some momentum behind the stock, and we're starting to see that appreciation as well. I've overlaid the tin price with our share price, and it's been a pretty good year for tin. It sort of sneaks under the radar a little bit, but it's up roughly 20% from this time last year, which I guess when all the focus has been on gold, it's sort of gone a little bit under the radar. But the tin price is pretty healthy, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to have exposure to a commodity that is generally not very well represented on the ASX. And we'll get to that in a little bit later. Look at it, as you can see from it, probably the share chart, the last 3 months has been the most exciting part. That was initiated by our Kelpie resource, which we'll talk about, but also the Weethalle gold option. We've had a bit of changeover of our major shareholders. The board has stayed the same, but it's certainly been a very exciting last 3 months for us. And so a little bit on tin. I was reminded about this slide by Sean Russo earlier on in the year about the advantages of all metals to energy transition and technology. And I guess what people had sort of focused on at the time was the exposure for lithium. But tin was the number one commodity on that chart, as you can see. And look, it's a little bit out of date. Well, it's not out of date, it's a little bit old, but it's certainly not out of date. This study was done back in 2018. And I did a little bit of research into the technology side of tin usage. And often tin, people use semiconductor production and demand as a bit of a proxy for tin usage, because as we know, tin's use in solder holds all those semiconductors together. Anybody can do this research themselves. There's a plethora of information out there on the web about semiconductor production, demand, and data centres and whatnot. And the growth forecasts on that part of in that market are enormous. And so I think the future for tin is very healthy, and we will get further and further, or greater and greater exposure to that in the coming years. On the demand side, because it's a relatively small market, it doesn't take much to upset that market, and there's been quite a few little interruptions to tin supply this year. Sort of a civil war going on in the DRC, or the eastern parts of the DRC, affected the Bissau mine, one of the world's largest tin mines. Myanmar, the disruption there because of a coup d'etat has caused a disruption to one of the larger mines in Myanmar, and more recently Indonesia has sort of clamped down on some illegal mining as well. So there has been this interruption to tin supply, and that helps create that tailwind effect on the tin price. So very happy with where we are placed in that tin market. So we'll talk, so the company now has exposure to both tin and gold. We'll talk firstly about the tin market. Bygoo Project in the heart of central sort of southern New South Wales, agricultural region. We're very comfortable coming into this part of the world because it is very similar to what we had dealt with previously at Yarrawinda. Broad acre farming, a very good rural community, but with a history of tin mining. Tin mining goes back about 100 years in this region, particularly at the Ardlethan mine just outside of town. It's a significant tin producer, one of the largest tin producers on mainland Australia for the best part of 20 years. The big news this year was our announcement of the resource that we subsequently named Kelpie. I've got a video here. Hopefully I might be able to run that. I'm not sure if that's going to work or not, but let's have a go. So as you can see, it's sort of a resource in three parts, which is really just a function of where the drilling has been in that prospect area. Very continuous mineralisation where it has been drilled, open along strike and down dip. So lots of opportunities to grow that resource. And I guess that's the other important part of putting out that announcement, was that at the same time we announced an exploration target, quite a substantial exploration, 12-20 million tonnes of a similar grade to Kelpie. So we think there's a good potential here to increase the resource by 2 to 3 times. And that's doing some relatively simple things, drilling those gaps between those bodies of mineralisation, extending the resource only 250 metres along strike in both directions, and also there's room to extend down dip in what we still believe is within open pit parameters. But that's just really the start of the exploration potential through the whole project. Ben and Gary have done a huge amount of work mapping and sampling in the broader region around Kelpie. Lots of tin mineralisation at surface. Let me start that. So there's excellent potential to find additional Kelpies in the immediate area. A bit of a fly through of what Kelpie looks like on the ground. These are the Dumbrell workings, mined 1915, 1917. Significant production. They mined about 6% tin, probably quite selectively, I imagine, which is great because they left a lot of mineralisation behind. But it is over quite a large area. So, and I guess that all those historical workings provide some guidance to where our future exploration is heading. But at the same time, we've also been able to go out and map the granite contact, which hosts that mineralisation. Plenty of open areas that haven't had any drilling whatsoever. And this is a bit of video. We were out on site in October looking at some of the rocks around the margins of Kelpie. This is pretty typical sort of stuff. Lots of deep workings. That's actually another area called Bygoo South, but a very significant battery on site back there in the day. So indicate some pretty significant sort of mineralisation being processed. So, but what we're really trying to do here is, so Kelpie itself is just under 20,000 tonnes of contained tin. We've sort of demonstrated that we can think, you know, that's maybe 2 to 3 times larger, including our exploration target. But still, that's only part of the story. What we really want to do here is grow the Bygoo project into 100,000 contained tonnes or plus, you know. And we think there's great potential to do so. 20 kilometres of mostly untested strike along the granite contact at Bygoo. There's evidence of mineralisation all along that contact where there's exposure. Don't forget the Ardlethan mine itself is about 5 kilometres south of Kelpie. That was a mine operated for about 20 years, initially open pit and then underground. So that's a great example of the opportunities that's still available there. We're doing some work in the immediate Ardlethan mine area that we call Ardlethan East, and so there'll be more information coming out about that in due course. But still plenty of opportunities right down to the southern part of the project, Bald Hill, an area that we've hardly touched yet, but with some historical mining and some previous exploration. And we're applying state-of-the-art techniques here to help explore this area. We flew an aeromagnetic survey earlier this year to help our bedrock mapping in areas where there isn't a lot of exposure. The magnetic coverage that was there in the first place, public data, government data, quite coarse, relatively broad space. And we've reflown that, very close spacing, 50-metre line spacing, super low. That plane's flying about 30 metres above the ground level, which gives us really high quality, high resolution data. We think that structure is an important part of exploring for these sort of tin systems, and the best way to do that is magnetics. And this has been knocking some rocks down at Bald Hill, an area that we haven't really even got to yet. So plenty of other opportunities for us to find new deposits at Bygoo. I've mentioned earlier Ardlethan East, a lot of surface expressions of mineralisation surrounding the Ardlethan mine, very shallow drilling. We believe there's some stratigraphic cover there that's obscuring some tin breccia deposits underneath, and we're working up those sort of targets at the moment. On to the other point, I guess, about making a tin project is being able to economically process it. And so we've taken some steps in that direction this year as well. And that's 2 components, ore sorting and conventional metallurgical test work. We've been able to get some ore sorting results back so far, thanks to the guys at Tomra for testing our material earlier this year. Just a very high level conceptual test. They run it through their machine here, the scanner. This isn't our credit to Sky Metals for allowing us to film this. Ore sorters are a fantastic technology, really ideally suited to tin processing because of the physical characteristics of cassiterite being very dense, provides a great contrast to the silica gangue minerals around it. So the ore goes through this machine, it gets scanned with X-rays, looks for density contrasts, separates the ore from the waste. You can see the 2 different streams here. That's obviously waste on the left, ore on the right. We were able to demonstrate that we could separate up to 90% of the mass from the mineralisation. Dark minerals, so that's all. That's dark minerals. That's cassiterite. Lighter minerals, obviously, all the silica. So that's a really, we think that will be an important part of a processing solution going forward. All the major mines around the world are using ore sorting technology. We think this will be a part of our process as well. But more importantly, I guess, is having the metallurgical, the conventional metallurgy has to work as well, and we'll have some information about that out shortly. In the meantime, Kelpie really underpins our valuation, and I think this slide sort of captures the investment proposition. We've got a substantial resource that competes well against all the other ASX or Australian domiciled projects. There's only a handful of players, as I mentioned before. We're probably the cheapest valuation at the moment, which is partly because we're also at the earlier stage of development. We're still at sort of an advanced exploration stage. But I think once we get some more information about metallurgy and those sort of things out into the market, that presents another de-risking threshold for investors, and I think we'll start to see greater value recognised in our project. In the meantime, we've also it's been great to get some exposure to gold at record prices. The Weethalle project, just up the road from Bygoo, so more or less the same neighbourhood. We've been able to leverage our understanding of, or growing understanding of the geology in this part of the world, and look at essentially a similar sort of geological system. Both Bygoo and Weethalle are intrusive related mineralised systems. Tin at Bygoo, gold at Weethalle. And I should, while we're here, acknowledge the great work of Dave McInnes and Richard Blewett, the vendors of the project, who did a remarkable job of targeting Weethalle and bringing it to what was essentially drill-ready stage. They've been a delight to work with so far, and I really hope we have some success with them here at the project. I guess what attracted us to the project was firstly the scale opportunity. We also recognise there's hardly been any exploration done sort of west of the Gilmore Suture. Most of the exploration in this part of the world for gold and tin was back in the 80s, so not a lot of modern exploration. But Dave recognised early on the uniqueness of the the Weethalle granite, this sort of circular body in the land holding there. Most granites tend to get elongated through shearing and whatnot in these sort of belts, but the Weethalle granite, quite a circular feature, stands out. There is some historical mining in the region, going back to the 30s, really high-grade gold, and the boys brought some samples along for you to have a look at if you're interested. Some, quartz and sulphide style of mineralisation, very high grade, up to 5 ounces per tonne mined from there back in the day. Sort of a shallow, I've got a video, I don't need to describe it if I can show you. Sort of a narrow kind of reef style of mineralisation. It's sitting in a paddock. Mined sort of modest kind of depths, probably modest production, but very high grade production. So interesting sort of geological setting, high grade gold in the system. But I guess what was more interesting is the IP survey that Dave and Richard did. Because there's a little bit of sulphide in the system, makes it particularly responsive to induced polarisation, IP. So you should be able to map the chargeability of that sulphide underground. And so they did an IP survey initially over the Weethalle mine workings, which generated quite an interesting anomaly in itself. But as they stepped out from those mine workings, generated a particularly strong anomaly further to the east, not far below surface. And I guess this area has never seen any sort of drilling at all. So there has been a handful of holes drilled at Weethalle, although now that we've been on the ground, we sort of question the effectiveness of that drilling. But in this area where the IP anomaly is, not a single drill hole. And I guess that's what really sort of attracted us to the project. Some complementary soil geochem showed that there was arsenic associated with that IP anomaly, and that arsenic is probably an indicator of sulphide. So all these independent data sets pointing towards an area that has never had a single drill hole. And that is what we've been doing in the last few weeks, drilling some holes testing that IP anomaly, and I know everybody would love to hear me make an announcement about the results, but unfortunately those assays are still a couple of weeks away. Wouldn't be a surprise to hear that the labs are busy at the moment. We've been on site, really interesting rocks at surface. This is on the ground with Dave and Rich, doing some initial inspections. I'm not sure what Gary's got there, but he was pretty excited about it. Great exposure. Really, it's quite surprising that this area hasn't seen any modern exploration for the best part of 40 years. We're able to look at some of this core. Unfortunately, it's of limited value because it's so old. All the blocks and everything are completely deteriorated. But still, it gives us a bit of insight as to what that looks like. Look, I think I've sort of talked about that. A very good deal for Caspin. I think if all things going well, it'll be a great deal for our vendors as well. We've paused the program at the moment. We've drilled some holes into that IP anomaly. We've been encouraged by what we see, but we don't want to go too far without getting some assay feedback. So looking forward to getting that and then either continuing the program as planned. But at the same time, we've also recognised a number of other targets in that project area that are probably worthy of a drill hole as well. So some interesting sort of decision points for the company coming up. So to wrap it all up, what a fantastic time for the company. We've got basically the value of the company is underpinned by Kelpie. Even then, that's probably at a discount. The future for tin looks fantastic. We're a relatively unique investment proposition on the ASX. And then on top of that, investors are getting essentially a free option on a gold project, discovery ready, that we're drilling and we're active on in an area that hasn't had any exploration before. A truly greenfields gold project, really in the middle of New South Wales. And I think, as I was saying before, we're learning more and more about this area. So leveraging that understanding, I think we'll recognise other opportunities in that belt as well. So very good time for the company. There's a lot going on. I think in terms of immediate news flow, we'll have some results from that first phase of Weethalle drilling, followed by Bygoo met results, and then leading into quite an extensive drilling campaign in the new year. Initially to further drilling at Weethalle, and then quite an extensive resource extension program at Bygoo, where we hope to grow that resource. So quite a lot of, there'll be a break over Christmas, but then it's going to be a pretty busy and intense few months following that. So I think I'll leave it there, ladies and gentlemen, and take some questions if anybody wants.